Five things that you can do, that Azimio can do to defeat Ruto in 2027. 5 things that the Azimio can do to defeat Ruto in 2027. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, friends, enemies, and comrades, this is Kenya Revolutionary. I'm bringing this video to you to give you five things that Azimio can do to beat Kenya Kwanza. Because as it stands right now, it seems like Azimio are rudderless, clueless, and don't know what to do. They're just depending on Mandamano. They are looking forward to Saba Saba. And we all know that is not going to be a solution. You're not going to beat Ruto or take over office simply by wearing a sufuria in your head and going for Saba Saba. That's not the solution. So what are the 5 things that they can do? Stay tuned. But before I go on, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please go ahead, hit the subscribe button, like, share, and comment. Tell me what you think about this video, okay? All right, let's get to it. Number 1, Azimio has to get rid of Raila Odinga. Raila Odinga needs to move to the backstage. I'm sorry. I know this is the most difficult thing to do, but if they want to have any chance of beating Ruto in 2027, Raila Odinga should not be a factor in this. Now, most people can argue that Azimio cannot exist without Raila Odinga. To some extent, that's true, because Raila is like a one-man army, okay? He's that last of the dying Mohegan, okay? He's been there since the 90s. But the truth is, Raila is no longer effective. He has ran 5 times for president, but he hasn't won. Every time he runs, it's always, or he's been rigged out, or whatever the case is. But he never wins the elections, okay? Then we have the same thing. We go to Mandamano, people protest, and then there's a handshake, or a government of national unity, or some bull crap like that. No. If you want to beat Ruto fair and square in 2027, Raila has to take a backstage. Now, I hear a lot of people who are arguing there's this thought that, Raila should just relax, let things get worse as far as the economy and as far as the commodity prices going up. As you know, people in the ground are now complaining about the government not doing enough to improve the economy. So the argument is Raila should just sit back and wait for things to get worse, then wait for people to have their own mandamano and invite Raila to come and save the day and to champion their ideas or their cry. He should be the face of the mandamano against the government, government deeds, government misdeeds or mishaps or whatever you want to call it. Now, the problem is this. Just because people go out there would like to go to Mandamano because of the standard of living, of the cost of living, that does not necessarily translate to they want Raila to take over government or to become the president. Okay? For example, in Rift Valley or Central Kenya, the people who are going out there and complaining or protesting over the cost of living, yes, they want the government to do something. They're protesting against what the government is doing right now. The finance bill, the VAT tax on gas, fuel, petrol, okay, and so forth, okay? They're not protesting because they want Raila to be the president. There should be a clear distinction about that, or you should be able to make a clear distinction about that. Just because they are protesting against the government because of the state of economy does not mean that they want Raila to become the president and rule or govern over them. That's what I mean. So you can't assume this. Even though they're going to Mandamano because of the price of living or because of the cost of living or whatever the case is, that still does not necessarily mean that they want Raila Odinga to be the president. So that's the main problem with this assumption that Baba should just sit back and not say anything while things are getting worse and worse, and then he should step in when everyone is desperate. Okay? It doesn't work that way. Okay? But anyway, the first reason is Raila has to step back from Azimio. Okay? That's number one, because this perception is Raila will never get the presidency. presidency. And by now, some people are thinking Baba always just wants the Nusumkati. We've seen since the Kibaki time, since with Uhuru, yes, he won, but he never claimed the presidency. He didn't want to take power. So he had to negotiate for a government of national unity, and in Uhuru's case, for a handshake, okay? So most people are looking at Raila like, okay, it's his time, he'll never win the presidency, it's always the same reasons, being rigged off and whatever, but he doesn't want to take power. And that's partly is Raila to blame, actually, okay? So he needs to step back, okay? It does not mean that he could leave the party. He can still be out there, like, on the background. Actually, follow Uhuru's steps. Look at Uhuru. Just sit back, okay? Be quiet, observe. You can still call shots from behind, but that's okay. But he needs to get off the stage. Raila cannot run in 2027. If he does, that's a guarantee win for Kenya Kwanza. So that's number one. Raila has to step out from being the front runner for any presidential bid, okay? That's number one. Number two, whoever is going to step up should be a maverick. Someone who is not afraid to disagree with Raila, okay? Someone who has an independent mind, okay? I'll give you an example. We can use Obado, for example. Was he in the former governor of Migori, whatever the case is? Obado? Was it Obado? Yeah, someone. There was a time when Raila, the ODM people wanted to take him out. But since he was serving his people and people loved him, he stood out against ODM Raila Odinga. And guess what? His supporters in Migori, if I'm not wrong, came out and supported him, despite the fact that Raila, who is viewed as the kingpin of Nyanza province, going against him, but people actually stood up to defend him because of what he did for the people. It's the same guy who was accused of, they were trying to accuse him, link him with the murder of one of his side piece. That's a story for another day. But anyway, what I'm saying is this. When you stand up, not necessarily being against Raila, but not necessarily, I'm not saying that they should be at loggerheads with Raila Odinga, but they should be independent from Raila Odinga. They should have their own mind, okay? Now, Wajakoya had that it factor when he ran for presidency, okay? As nutty as he sounded. But Wajakoya messed up because he eventually joined the Azimio coalition. So now everybody's looking at him like he's part of those Mandamano group, pro-handshake, pro-agitation for no reason, okay? So if he runs for president again, which he might, most likely he will, the people will look at him as he's being sponsored by Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga. And to be honest, most Kenya do not fancy Raila Odinga or Uhuru Kenyatta. The handshake was something that not so many people were happy about. In fact, majority of Kenyans didn't like it, whether it was the Kenya Kwanza side or the Azimio side. Both parties didn't like it for different reasons, but the bottom line is they didn't like it. So anyone that's associated with Raila Odinga or Uhuru Kenyatta, as Wajakoya is, they look at you like you're part of that group. You're being sponsored by the dynasty. Okay? So whoever is going to stand up needs to be independent of that. Be your own person. Don't be afraid to disagree with Raila Odinga. Have ideas that are contrary to what Azimio is proposing. Yes, you have to be ready for the consequences if you do so. As you've seen Obado did, Miguna did. But guess what? These people are now respected. You see how Nyanza province, actually Miguna was received when he went to, I think it was a funeral or something like that. He went to not a funeral, but it was some meeting up there somewhere. And people were cheering when they saw him after he came back in Kenya. Okay? But even though he had his difference with Raila Odinga, but people respected him for the fact that he stood his ground. He's his own man. He has his own mind. He's not afraid of disagreeing with Baba, the proverbial king of Nyanza province. Okay? So the person who will stand up from Azimio and will probably risk being kicked out of the coalition or whatever the case is, these are the things that he or she has to be ready to face. Be a maverick. Somebody who's not afraid to disagree with Azimio, okay? You will receive the Jalango treatment if you do so, but be ready for that. Be your own man. That's number 2. Be a maverick. Number 3, you have to put or propagate, not propagate, but market the people's interest. The people of Kenya, what do they want? Listen to them. Fight for them, okay? I'll give you example. Okia Omtata. Oh, how I wish this man can run for presidency. These are the people that we need. Okia Omtata has a history of fighting for the people, or the people's interest. Now, the person who will probably come out from Azimio or who wants to go against Ruto should be that person like Okia Omtata. Always fight for the interest of the people, whether if you're MP, private citizen, or whatever position you are in, civil servant in Kenya. If you plan on running for presidency in 2027 and you want to go against Ruto, put the people's interest first. Fight. These issues that are propping up now, okay? Like, the people, okay, Okia Omtata is doing that. He went to the courts. He's a lawyer, okay? He did that, okay? For a layman who's not a lawyer or whatever, be out there, organize people. Talk about these issues. If you're an MP, if you're a governor, whatever the case, if you're planning on running for 2027, organize some people, have a forum, and discuss these things. Start making your name known. Build up your resume. Let people see you as someone who is discussing, listening to the people, and fight. Go to the parliament, introduce a bill, draft a bill, something that helps, that people will look at and say, yes, this guy is fighting for us. You can go up there, instead of being like Peter Kaluma, who's wants to draft a bill to get rid of the Chapter 6, whatever. You come up with a bill and that makes it easier for people to actually recall these MPs that they don't like, something like that. That will gain you a lot of clout with the people. It will be favored because the people, it's so funny that most Kenyans, we do not like our MPs, but we still vote for them and we don't take action to recall them. So if you are somebody who wants to run for presidency in 2027, be that guy who fills that void. Come up there and gather, form a group. Be part of these interest-focused groups that push forward the people's interest, okay? So that's number 3. You have to be a person who puts forward people's interests. Fight for the people, whether it's, being part of drafting a bill in the parliament that, calls for the recall for MPs who are not there doing their jobs, or fighting for, things that are like corruption, something like that. Anything, come up with an issue. There's a lot of issues in Kenya. Be part of that organization. Let your name be on it. Okay, let people start seeing that you are listening to them on the ground and you are pushing forth for their issues, okay? You're fighting for their issues. And I gave an example of Okia Omtata, okay? All right, that's number 3. Number 4, have a draft, a pilot form of your manifesto. Yeah, I know people can say, okay, it's only 2023. 2027 is 4 years down the road or whatever. Well, how is it 4 years down the road or 5, whatever the case is? Yes. Safari ya kesho hupangwa leo. Okay? Look at how Ruto did it. Ruto recognized that this handshake was going to put him at odds with everybody else in the government. So what did he do? He hit the ground running, gathers a bunch of people who believed in the same ideas that he did, and he started campaigning. And it bared fruit. So yes, again, it ties back to the people's interest, the number 3 one. I'm saying number 4 is have a draft or a kind of manifesto of what your plan is. Start moving around the country. Like I say, it ties it in with number 3. Move around the country, whether you're going to, not funerals, but, some public gathering. Talk about your ideas. Start now. Because basically, if you start now, you are planting seeds. So by 2027, before August 2027, people know what you stand for and who you are. You might be a nobody. You might be an MP somewhere who nobody cares about or knows who you are. But if you have a manifesto, a plan, you remember Okuru Okot? When he came with Punguza something, Punguza Garama. Punguza Garama thing. Something similar to that. Come up with a Punguza Garama type of thing, but have it in the form of a manifesto. Okay? And start moving around in different parts of the country, forming alliances with the local leadership who share your same vision, and push for this thing. Market. Don't stop. I know it requires money, but sometimes you have to start early. Okay? Galvanize the people. Let them be familiar with what you're trying to do, how you would intend to govern if you become the president. You don't have to necessarily say, hey, I want to be president in 2027, but by pushing forth this idea, I go to Okiya Mtata again. The man has a history of fighting for people's interests. If Okiya Mtata right now starts moving around the country, holding rallies, as small as they may be, already people are excited about the idea of him fighting for the people, going into courts to fight the finance bill. So imagine if he starts moving around the country with a draft manifesto, a pilot form of manifesto, of his vision of how he wants to rule or govern the nation in 2027. By 2027, everyone should be running around him, okay? And Ruto will have to face him. And guess what? He will destroy Ruto. Even the people in Sugoi will vote for Okiya Mtata if the economy keeps on going in the same trajectory that it is right now. So imagine somebody like Okiya Mtata going around the country and doing this. So yes, have a draft manifesto of how you're planning on governing, what needs to be done in Kenya for us to live a better life. That's number 4, okay? Number 5, and lastly, you have to, whoever that person is, you have to fight for electoral reforms. What went wrong in 2022? What went wrong in 2017? What went wrong in 2007? 2022, as I see it, I don't think there's much that happened. The Azimio dropped the ball. The Azimio part, they dropped the ball. And they tried to blame it on the IEBC. It was relatively transparent, okay? But if there's something that needs to be changed, I know the issue right now is the bipartisan delegation committee are trying to work on how, when when are they going to choose the people who will head the IEBC, the next IEBC, whatever, which needs to be done. Okay, whoever wants to run for president needs to have his or her fingerprints on this issue. Push it. Be one of the protagonists that are pushing for these commissioners to be put in place in time, sooner rather than later. But your name needs to be in it. And if there's any reforms that needs to be done in the IEBC, the person running for president should raise that issue now, so we don't make the same mistakes that we made in 2017 to 2007. Okay? Because remember what Stalin said, and I'll paraphrase, it's not the votes that counts, but it's who counts the votes that decides the race. Okay? So those are the 5 things that I think if you're in Azimio or you are against Ruto, those are the 5 things that you can do to beat Ruto. Because Ruto is dropping the ball. The economy is tanking, he's borrowing, the price of living is high. The cost of living, is high. The Kenyan shilling is losing its worth. And so forth, so forth. Everything is good. And his PSAs and all these corruption scandals are just propping up every month. So this will be an opportunity for somebody who wants to run in 2027 against William Ruto to lay a groundwork as to what they'll do different from Ruto. Because he will become unpopular if he continues this way. So this is the time. Just to wrap up, again, 5 things that I talked about. If you're in Azimio, or not even in Azimio, if you're planning on running in 2027, you have to disassociate yourself with Raila Odinga. That's number 1. And if you're in Azimio, you have to get away from that. Raila Odinga needs to sit back. Any association with Raila Odinga will be viewed as you're a puppet for the dynasties. You're being probably paid by Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, whatever the case. That's what people will say. And it ties in the second one. Whoever that is has to be a maverick. If you're an Azimio, you have to be willing to go against the grain. And that might land you into hot waters. And they might have to kick you out of Azimio altogether. But you have to do, these are the things that you need to do to be your own person. I gave an example of Obado and Miguna. Though Miguna was never part of Azimio, but I'm just giving an example. He has his own mind. So they're not afraid of facing the consequences. They are willing to stand by what they think. They're principled. That's the word. Okay? Number 3, the people's interest should be number 1. I gave example of Okiom Tata again. Things like the financial bill, fight it. If you're an MP, go out there, vote against it, move to the courts, do whatever, hold public rallies or whatever the case, meetings, talk about it, engage with the wananchi, let them be heard, let them know that you hear them, that you understand what they're going through, and fight for them in a real way, just like Okiom Tata. Okay? Number 4. Have some form, a draft form, a pilot form of how your manifesto will look like. Tie it in with all these things. And sell it. Uza sera zako. Okay? And lastly, electoral reforms. Make sure there's changes done that needs to be done. If there's anything that went wrong in 2022 that needed to be improved upon, speak now. Because as I said, if that's not fixed, as I said, I quoted Joseph Stalin, it's not the votes that counts, it's the person who counts the votes that decides who wins the race. Okay? Anyway, that's my 5 reasons in layman terms. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, my name is Kenyan Revolutionary. Tell me if you agree or disagree. Comment, subscribe, like, share, and tell me what you think. I'll talk to you guys next time. Peace.